Hey y'all, I haven't done a video in a while. I've had other things taking up my time and attention and energy, but I had a little bit of time. So I thought I'd make a video about a topic that I've been thinking about. And it's actually more about the topic than the content of the topic. So maybe that'll make a little bit more sense in a minute. But what's this guy? The topic is raw vegan the right way to eat? So first of all, I think that question itself is problematic. There's lots of people that will defend their way of eating for a variety of different reasons to be the right way to eat for the human animal. And I think that there are some things to consider before you make sort of a declaration like that. And it's very individualized in a certain sense. And it depends on what your interests are and sort of what is at the forefront of what you care about. You could be asking from an angle of elite athlete performance. You could be asking from an environmental standpoint. You could be asking just for human health or healing standpoint, or from a non-human animal perspective. And it doesn't mean that you're going to get actually a different answer, but it might create a different set of data for you to take a look at. And at the end of this video, I'll go into a little bit more of why the data, I think, isn't the only thing we need to look at, the scientific data. There are problems with that sometimes as well. So another problem with this question is that there is such a thing as bio-individuality, meaning that everybody is slightly different. And just to take, for example, my plants. I have a lot of plants in my house. They all come from different regions. They have slightly different needs. Their overall needs are the same, more or less, but they have bio-individuality. And the same is true for the human animal or any other animal that you look at. Depending on where that animal originated or where the human originated, where the ancestry comes from, there may be slight differences in the needs of that individual. And that's also not to mention if there are health concerns, specific health concerns, or people are on specific medications, that certain foods are or preparatory methods are contraindicated. So we need to look at all those things. And another point that I think about quite a bit is that just saying you are raw vegan or paleo or any other type of diet that you want to talk about really doesn't give you enough information to go on. It sort of gives you a rough idea of what the person's not eating, but it doesn't really give you enough information to do any kind of analysis about whether the way they're eating is quote unquote the right way, even for them. You'd have to get the specifics. This is what I run into when I do coaching around nutrition and including more raw foods, is that sometimes people will say, well, I tried raw vegan, it didn't work for me. And a lot of people will just take that at face value. Oh, it didn't work. Or a lot of people will tell me, wow, I can't believe you're still doing raw vegan, because this is my 13th year. And they'll say, gosh, everybody else I knew did it and started having health problems. And my question is always, oh, what were they eating? You know, and of course, nobody knows exactly what anyone else is eating for the most part. So the point is that you can eat unhealthily on absolutely any type of diet. I don't think of raw vegan food as a diet. It's just the way I eat, and it's definitely excluding certain things. So I suppose you could call it that, but it's just the way I nourish my body and the way I feel best. But you could be eating a lot of packaged, technically raw vegan foods that are highly processed, that are high in oils and fats and sugars, and you could be very unhealthy. And I think a lot of people who don't have sort of a basis in sort of fundamental food prep ways that are sustainable for raw vegan diet, sort of fall into these pitfalls of eating, for example, a lot of gourmet raw vegan foods, because there are a lot of different ways you can eat raw vegan. Just like I always give this example, my son and his friends in their early 20s and late teens were vegans, and I would go to their house where several of them lived, and they'd be doing a lot of Oreos and Starburst and prepackaged, very highly processed vegan foods, So if someone's eating that and they're like, yeah, I did vegan, it just didn't work for me. It's like, okay, well, what were you eating? And on raw vegan, I think people tend to think of that as being like a very strict diet or something. And really, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. You pretty much are on a high fruit or a high fat, just because you have to get your calories from one or the other for the most part. And but you can do like I mentioned, a gourmet raw vegan diet, which a lot of people start out that way. I did too, where you go to restaurants and you get that, you hear that old saying, you can eat raw vegan cheesecake for breakfast and it's good for you. But the longer you eat that way, if it's not now replacing an unhealthier way of eating, because for a lot of people, if you're eating that raw vegan cheesecake, that's actually healthier than what you were eating on the standard American diet before. So you may see a lot of initial health benefits, but then after a while, your body's like, wait a minute, this is super high fat, this is high salt, high sugar, and high calorie. And so people don't tend to do very well on that long term. And that's true for just about any kind of diet that's actually healthier than the standard American diet or healthier than you were eating before. You can do very well on it for an initial period of time. But then if it's not actually done in a healthy way, it's going to catch up with you. So just hearing someone say, oh, I eat a raw vegan diet, you have to get more specifics. You have to know exactly what they're eating and how much of it, and what are the ratios, and to get any kind of an idea. And I always recommend to people to use Chronometer if you're interested in the nutrients that you're getting compared to the recommended amounts. It's online. There's a free version of it. It's very good. It's recommended by my professors who are pretty much the elite raw vegan nutritionists, Dr. Rick and Karen Dina. So I recommend, just punch your food into there and see what it looks like. I particularly recommend this to people who are doing raw vegan because, especially at the beginning, because you get a lot of people who are uneducated about it and not knowledgeable about it, and will tell you all kinds of things that will go wrong when you start eating that way, which none of those things happened to me. And I always point out that those people who were critics were not people who had done raw vegan diets. So definitely take things with a grain of salt, and also consider the source, right? Always. So this is one of those topics to me, what's the right way to eat, that really is an inquiry into your deeper motivations and into really looking at the beliefs that you hold. Where did those beliefs come from? Are they serving you? And I think this is something we need to be doing in our lives in general. I don't know about you. Recent events have really shown, and this is something that I have talked about for many, many years, if you know me, but the corporate interests that are running everything are not particularly concerned about you as an individual or your health, even if they say they are. So we need in our lives to be taking our power back and to be using our critical thinking with all of these things, and also to be not only looking at the data, like I said at the beginning, the scientific data, of which some is reliable and some is not, and do you have a reliable way to tell the difference? And I will tell you that the most reliable way to tell you what is good for your body and what is not propaganda. It is not advertising. It is your body. It is your own body who is wise beyond any understanding, wise beyond any scientific understanding, for sure, and is a self-healing organism. So if you are looking at changing the way you eat, I would suggest that you think about it in terms of how can you get out of the way of your own body's self-healing mechanism? How can you not be throwing wrenches into the system, right? Or how can you not be throwing fuel on the fire? And raw vegan food, if done in a healthy way, is an incredible way to get out of the way of the body. It's not putting a load on the body. The body's not having to fight fires. It's not in a constant state of inflammation. But your body will tell you. So can you get to a place where you are eating clean enough? Doesn't have to be perfect. Can you dump out the biggest offenders? Can you get rid of a lot of the processed foods and the not organic foods and the not grass-fed, for instance, meats? Can you get rid of those things, which will probably clear you out enough to not only resolve quite a bit of any health problems you may be experiencing, or at least start you in that direction, but can you clean your body out enough, your system out enough, to where you can actually hear, perceive is a better word, what your body is telling you about what you are fueling it with? And if you can do that, your body is the most reliable friend, your best friend, your wisest guru, and your most truth teller for you. So if you can get to that place, you can then rely on your own feedback loop. And you then become impervious or nearly impervious to advertising campaigns and people who are just trying to take your money to sell you the next supplement, superfood, processed food, fast food, whatever. And I believe that this is something we need to be doing holistically in our lives in general, is really remembering that we are sovereign beings, remembering that we are self-healing organisms, self-balancing organisms, and to get out of the way of that and remove those inputs that are getting us off track and disconnecting us from our hearts and our bodies and our truth. So that's what I wanted to say about this topic today, and encourage people to just take it back. Take back your power. It's not for sale. All right. Love you guys.